Right now, joining us, Professor Robert Jensen. He's a professor of journalism, UT Austin. Professor, thanks for joining us here on Houston's Morning News. We're talking about Thanksgiving, Native Americans, what really took place 350 years ago. But shouldn't Thanksgiving be remembered in the spirit of giving thanks, Professor?
Well, it depends on whether one cares about history or not. You know, the United States is always celebrating its history, but we tend to celebrate only the parts of our history that are convenient, and I think Thanksgiving is a good example. There's no shortage of ways people can give thanks throughout the year, but the day we call Thanksgiving has a history, and I think we have to own up to the reality of that history, and the reality of that history is essentially Holocaust denial, a kind of denial of genocide.
Professor, so I'm not disputing anything that you're saying. The facts are the facts, and you are absolutely correct. Anyone that knows American history knows what took place. But the day of Thanksgiving, in my home anyway, is a lot more than just remembering the Pilgrims and the Indians and how the Indians helped feed the Pilgrims at that time who couldn't grow anything. It is a time that I thank God and my family for all of the blessings that we have received throughout the year. I don't want to give that up.
Well, I don't think people should give up the idea of recognizing how one is blessed and why one should be thankful. But the question is not how we individually deal with this, but the nature of holidays are collective enterprises. And Thanksgiving Day has an identity, the way children are taught about it in the schools, the famous story of the feast in 1621. Well, that's all well and good, but what we don't teach is the other reality. You say it's well known, but in fact it's not. And in fact, to just use the word genocide or Holocaust in regard to the European attempted extermination of indigenous people is to almost guarantee an argument these days. What I'm concerned about is not the way that U.S. history is written, but the way it has been rewritten to avoid these realities. And I think that holidays inevitably have a collective meaning, not an individual meaning. So if Thanksgiving, if this idea of giving thanks, of recognizing what one has achieved or what one has been given in the world, that's fine. But let's then create a new day. Maybe we should bury the existing Thanksgiving Day.
All right.
And then create a new holiday that tells the truth about our own history, where all of the blessings come from, in some sense.
All right, Professor. Well, let me do this. Let me ask you to hang on real quick here, and when we come back, think about this if you would. How would you like to see Thanksgiving changed? What would you do if you could change it? Joining us right now is Professor of Journalism at UT Austin, Professor Robert Jensen. Professor, thanks for hanging on this morning. We appreciate you being on with us.
Great to be with you.
All right, so the question was, before we went to break, how would you like to see Thanksgiving changed? If you could have your way, what would it look like on Thanksgiving?
Well, I'm not sure there would be a Thanksgiving as we understand it. In other words, when you have a holiday so connected to one of the great crimes in recorded human history, that is the European genocide against indigenous people on this continent, maybe the thing is the decent thing to do is to end the holiday, to say this is not consistent with a society that has a capacity for some sort of moral self-reflection. That would be, to me, a sense of, you could rename it Genocide Denial Day and at least tell the truth about what the culture is doing.
Professor, I mean, honestly, I don't understand why it is that so many people seem to have a problem with us giving thanks. Can I take another day then and give thanks with my family and thank God and my family and all of the blessings that I've received throughout the year, watch a little football, undo my pants, fall asleep in the middle of the afternoon? Can I have a day to do that?
You can have a day to do that any time you like. My point is that holidays come with a history and a meaning. And we don't just wake up one day and change that meaning. In other words, the meaning of Thanksgiving, this connection to the falsified version of U.S. history that has been taught for so long, the meaning of that is woven deeply into the fabric of the day. And one can't just wake up one day and magically change that. So what I'm asking for, Thanksgiving Day isn't really the question here. The question is whether or not the United States can come to terms with the history. We're the richest and, at least for the time being, the most powerful country that's ever existed on this planet. And the fundamental question we have to ask ourselves is, how did we get that way? Now, there's one story about hard work and the ingenuity and incentive of the American people, and there's a lot of truth to that. But there's another story, the story of conquest, the story of genocide. And that's not simply a historical question. That's ongoing. The United States' attempt to dominate much of the world today is a legacy.
You just don't like. You just really don't like this country very much, do you, Professor?
I was born in this country, and I will die in this country.
You just really don't.
Whether I like this country. The country is more than any particular political perspective or any particular telling of history. We are the country, and that's why I think this is so important, because we're collectively responsible for what this country means.
All right, Professor.
I reject a lot of what this country has come to mean. That's true, but I want it to mean something decent.
I appreciate your time with us here this morning, Professor Robert Jensen, professor of journalism with UT Austin.